Hi, I'm Dale Peterson, and welcome to the Unsolicited Response Show. When we look at companies, vendors that are making ICS security products, we see that they tend to focus on one product segment. For example, when you look at Waterfall, they're unidirectional, one-way data diodes. When you look at a Clarity or Nozomi, they're focused mainly on detection, with, of course, a sprinkling of asset management, asset inventory, and Verve, endpoint protection, and so on and so on. Now, some of them have incorporated a second product. For example, they've added remote access, many of them have, in these COVID times. And actually, that addition has been quite successful for some of them. But what we don't see too often is a company that is trying to be the one-stop shop. Someone that says, I'm going to have a full line of security products for your OT or ICS security needs. So whenever you need something, come to us. And I guess that's true, except I think Bayshore Networks is the first example we have, and certainly the best example we have, of someone that is trying to stake out that position. They, for many years, have had this deep packet inspection firewall similar to Tofino. They have unidirectional now, one-way devices. They've got remote access. They've got a variety of other products. And now, just this week, they announced an agreement with GE where they're going to be integrating GE's OpShield intellectual property and creating some additional products around threat and detection. So I thought this would be a good time to talk to him. I've been meaning to talk to Kevin Senator. He's CEO of Bayshore Networks. And we talk about a lot of things. We talk about the different product categories. For example, that industrial firewall, the Tofino category, really hasn't seen much movement since really Eric sold Tofino to Belden. But now Bayshore has put a lot of effort into growing that market. The unidirectional market, the one-way market. Bayshore is looking to reduce price dramatically on that, sometimes down less than 25%. And Kevin calls this democratization. We'll see. And then, of course, this one-stop shop philosophy. That's very unique. So I'm talking to Kevin about this in this podcast. I'm also talking to him a little bit about why GE is doing this. Now, I can't speak for GE, but most of the ICS vendors are actually bringing in products, bringing in services. So it's a little strange that GE is spinning this out and saying, no, we don't want to do this anymore. We'd rather someone else do it and we'll just buy it from them. So that seemed a little strange to me. Now, I'm not convinced yet this is a winning strategy, but I really appreciate, as you know, when I put my marketing hat on, that this is actually a strategy. So many vendors just create a Me Too product and then put we're the leading in their marketing materials. Bayshore Networks is really trying something different. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but I enjoyed my conversation with Kevin. Now, I must warn you, I know from S4 days that some of you just hate anything that has a whiff of commercialism. Well, when you interview a CEO of a company, they're going to say good things about their company. So obviously there will be some of that in this podcast. I do challenge him on many things. I push back on things, and I will say that you will hear a lot of candor. He actually mentions prices. He mentions their burn rate. He mentions a variety of things. So we do get into some details, but if you're offended by the whiff of commercialism, this might not be the episode for you. But if you decide to plunge forward, here's my interview with Kevin Senator, CEO of Bayshore Networks. Joining me on the Unsolicited Response podcast is Kevin Senator. Kevin is the president and CEO of Bayshore Networks. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Well, you know, I've been wanting to get you or someone from Bayshore on the podcast for a while, or I guess it's now a video show as well, because I think you've got a unique strategy in that you're really one of the few vendors that are offering a line of OT security products as opposed to focusing on one specific niche in that line. And we'll talk about that. And then, although we're recording this on, I believe it's January 4th or February 4th, you've got an announcement coming out prior to when this will go public about an agreement you have with GE. So I want to talk to you about that. That was kind of a good impetus to actually get you on the show. But maybe let's start, because I looked at your background a little bit. You joined Bayshore Networks in 2017, but you did have a stint from 2002 to 2011 with Counterpane, which many people probably don't know. That was Bruce Schneier's company. And it's funny, I met Bruce before he was Bruce, when he had just finished his applied cryptography book. He was selling it out of a box at RSA, which then was just over 100 people with Revest and Shamir and Diffie and a few others. So he was really just kind of a long-haired nobody in the back of the room with a box. But that changed quite a bit. Do you have any Bruce Schneier stories, or what it was like to work with Bruce?
Well, Bruce was the only guy in the industry and I've been in the industry for 41 years, where people would chase us down the street for his autograph. And that's sort of eye-opening, right? People are literally chasing with his book for him to sign it. A lot of people, you go out to LinkedIn and a lot of people will put visionary, on their job description, right? And I always kind of chuckle, because I'm like, how do you get that on your resume? Right? Who anoints you to put visionary down? But Bruce was one of the two guys I've worked in this industry who really was a visionary. He saw back in the mid to late 1990s that companies wouldn't be able to keep up with threats on the IT side by themselves, that they would have to offload monitoring and then also correlating, not within their network, right, but among many customers to try to identify the low and slow attacks. And he got that, right? And I think the best way I can say is I was brought in, actually Counterpane was a turnaround when I was brought in 2002. Bruce had gone through 3 VPs of sales. They had gone through $70 million. The company was recapitalized. I was brought in. I was the only VP of sales they then had for the next 5.5 years. I understood Bruce. I understood how to use Bruce. And we had a great working relationship. But Morgan Stanley was one of our investors, and I can remember going to New York and meeting with the Morgan Stanley team in 2002, and they said, absolutely no way will we export our logs for monitoring. I'm like, okay, well, you just invested in this company. You can't. I mean, why did you do that, right?
Yeah.
And by the time we sold Counterpane just 4 years later to British Telecom and a very successful exit, all the financial institutions were exporting their log to some MSSP. And the value was they got the fact that they needed to correlate not just within their network, but what was happening to all the other major customers, right, to look for the low and slow attacks. And Bruce got that far before anybody else did. And so, it's one of the learning points, right, in my long career on working with somebody who understands what will happen eventually in the market. So anyway, it was a great experience working for him, and there were some unique moments in watching him work.
Yeah, he definitely, you hear that term visionary, you hear that term rock star. He is one of those.
He is.
And it's not self-anointed. It is, people, as I think you told me before we got on, people chasing him down to get his autograph or to get him to sign their book or something. So that must have been a lot of fun. Well, let's actually get into Bayshore then. And I'm gonna skip to this a little bit later, but as I said, one of the impetus of this is that Bayshore Networks is acquiring the OpShield technology from GE, which will further broaden your product line. I want to talk about that a little bit. But what was really interesting to me about your company, even before this, is I can't really think of anyone else that is pursuing this strategy of saying we're going to have a suite of products. We're going to have an industrial firewall. We're going to do remote access. We're going to do data-diode. We're going to do, and now detection. And you've almost, I'm sure there's some niches you don't fill, but no one else has done that line thing. So it's definitely a position. what makes you think that's a good position to be in? Obviously, you gave that a lot of thought. Why do that?
Yeah. So I was given this job in a turnaround, right, as CEO. I joined the company as VP of Sales and resigned 6 months later, and didn't do that under the intention of being CEO. There were real issues within the company as far as a product focus and deliverables. And I was offered this role. And so when I sat down with the team, we took a look at what was the technology that had been developed. They had developed a very powerful deep content inspection engine, which actually had been sold as a raw engine to, well, General Electric and a couple of other companies. And they had developed this very powerful ability to learn, to sit in an environment and learn what was going on. And I didn't know if we needed to be an OT security company or to become a DPI company. And we took a look at the market and where we could go. And we decided that we could really expand the market around unidirectional gateways. It was a market that really wasn't serviced by the next generation firewall vendors. They're, ancillary, very good companies, but I would say secondary companies in that market. High price, difficult to use, unique kit. And we thought we could develop a software-based solution to sit on a high performance server. And so we went down that path. And during that path, to get to that point, we actually had to go through the point of developing this IPS, the OT fuse, which, you call an industrial firewall. And we don't use the term firewall because we're not doing the routing and segmentation, because we actually think that's a bad thing for most OT engineers to try to do. And if you talk to Eric Byers about that, he actually fought me because I actually wanted to do that. And he said, no, that's the worst thing you can do. I wanted to kill myself trying to deal with these people on the phone when they were trying to set up a segmentation or a zone, because they don't need to do it and they don't know how to do it. But we had to go through that product. And so when I sat there, I said, okay, so we have to do this product anyways. And what's the problem in the OT space? And look, we all both know, and you've talked about this extensively, that all of the oxygen in this space has gone to the detection, the asset management detection space, right? And I was actually asked when I was given the job by the board, do we want to become an asset management vendor? And I said, well, why? There's 5 companies funded with $500 million, unless you give me $50 to $60 million. And this space is going to degenerate down to price and, how well your account rep is, because for most people, the technologies are very good. Here's what I'll say about the asset management space. I've been in this business for 41 years. You can talk to me about tokenring. You can talk to me about x86 computers. I worked for Toshiba when they introduced the T1000. I mean, most of the people in the asset management space are some of the smartest people I've come across in 41 years. The difference is I've been working longer than most of them have been alive. And so I've seen some of this before. You've got similar products that are hard to differentiate themselves really in the end, unless a CISO likes your report better or likes your UI better. But that's a difficult competitive business to be in at some point. And you've seen the exits, right? And let's be honest, the exits that have happened have been because the marginal gain of raising more money wasn't worth taking it and going forward, right? That's the honest answer, right? Or you don't exit.
But let's still dive into this, because you've got OT Fuse, you've got NetWall, you've got all these different products. So I understand what you're saying about maybe asset management, detection, that sort of thing. But why not just say we're going to be the best? We're going to focus on OT Fuse, or we're going to focus on one of these others. What drove you to say we think it's a good idea to offer a suite that customers are going to want to buy multiple products from the same vendor?
Yeah. So number one was the similarity in the base technology, or we couldn't do it, right? Okay. So the technology is very similar as far as the core technology, policy engine, deep content, not deep packet, but actually deep content inspection, right? And that's the core. We look at the OT space as a pyramid. The top part of that pyramid, the top 10%, can afford not only the procurement cost of the asset management discovery software and other solutions, but the human capital. The bottom part, the center part and bottom part of that pyramid are challenged around the human capital. So we wanted to make products that could be easily deployed, number one, could be automated in their functions, number two, and then could be married together as budget allowed, right, among a top management console. So, we believe people should be using asset management and detection tools and threat intelligence, if they can afford it. And if you have the human capital that can ingest it in real time. But if you can't, you need to have cabinet level protection, right? And you need to have network segmentation protection. If those technologies were vastly different on how we did our design architecture, you're right. It would be a hard push for a company our size. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not that easy, right? We work really hard. Our engineering team does probably more per man than anybody else is right now. But we thought it was the right thing to do. Time will tell, right? If this strategy was the right strategy. Look, OT Fuse is an evolutionary product. It is why Eric Byers and Marty Edwards came onto our technology board. It's a layer 2 device with a transparent bridge, right? It's got a built-in Modbus server. We're not doing source, destination, and protocol header file. We're going down to the full packet, full command level.
Sure.
It's exactly what they thought people should do, right?
Well, yeah, and I think, I was just going to say, let's just dig into that a little bit. So, obviously, Eric Byers came out with Tofino, really
Correct.
Kind of the first one in this space that was digging into the packet. So you could decide, allow these function codes to these registers, and you could get really granular, or you could just say, only allow read. The read only was very popular as well. And then MGuard came out, and there were a couple of others that were less successful. But it seems like that market had sort of stagnated, except for Bayshore Networks. It had a lot of attention. Belden bought Tofino and kind of mothballed it. It didn't go away, but we didn't really see any promotion or new capabilities. And Bayshore Networks has really been the only one that I've seen invest in both on the marketing side for the product as well as new capabilities for the product.
Right.
So what do you see as that market? Is that market growing at a line? Is that market going to go like this? What makes you bullish on that market?
Well, so when we go in, and I'll give you a perfect example of this market. So we got our traction in the water industry, which is how it led to the relationship with GE Digital. We can talk about that. When we did one of our first installs at the end of last year, I actually went to meet the customer. And they had, I'm not going to name the brand, but they had a brand of firewalls there. And I asked the director of the OT infrastructure, I go, well, why are you, placing our product in? What are you doing with that? He goes, I don't know. Some VAR installed that 5 years ago. I don't know how to read a firewall rule. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah. Your box is sitting here learning and sending me protocols and policies in the language I understand, right? That's why. It's an evolutionary product. Why is the market stagnated? Because you got the people who can understand and use a firewall and write a firewall rule and understands how to write firewall rules for all the different discrete functions that are happening within that given workstation, which, by the way, are going to be completely different at the workstation over in a factory. But that's not a large population, right? We built this product, and the reason, believe me, Eric and Marty avoided talking to me about Bayshore. Number one, because of the reputation Bayshore had, right? It took me a year and a half to get those two guys in a room together at RSA, show them OT Fuse and what we were doing. And actually, Marty Edwards jumped out of his chair. You can ask him this himself. He jumped out of his chair when I showed him the learning engine and populating policies. And he said, this is exactly what everybody should be doing. This is exactly what an OT operator should have at a cabinet level. So the rationale between OT Fuse is very simple. The OT operator understands what his equipment in that station is doing. He understands the protocols that this device is producing. And by the way, 20 feet down in a tire factory at another workstation, it's completely different. And OT Fuse recognizes that, and the operator trying to communicate to an IT guy to write firewall rules for every single discrete process is a nightmare, right? We eliminate that, right? So why did GE come along? GE got that. Is GE interested necessarily in selling a bunch of edge security devices? No, but they're interested in selling a lot of discrete manufacturing systems around simplicity and iFix, and they want to enable that. And we were able to do that. They showed up at a water show, and the VP of product management kind of looked at us and he said, can you really automatically learn and go into blocking mode? And they brought us within 2 weeks into their lab in New York. Within 30 days, we had a development contract with GE. We built an iFix. It went into the channel. They came to us and said, will you build a simplicity version? That got launched a few weeks ago. A couple months ago, they came to us and said, you can do this edge security business a lot better than we can. Would you be interested in taking this over and being our preferred partner? And we did, right? Okay. And I think it's a huge milestone, obviously, for Bayshore around the legitimacy of our technology, right?
Yeah, and I want to get into that GE, but I just want to stay on this for one more second.
Yeah.
So we saw with Tofino, for example, it had some real mind share with some large oil companies and got almost, I think they forced, not from a market standpoint, but the large oil company said, we need this, and people integrated that technology into little modules that worked in their systems. And the market stayed that way. I'm sure they continued to buy things. What I'm hearing you say is that you feel the technology that you have in OT Fuse, that once people understand its automated learning and automated blocking and ease of deployment, that you think the reason the market that's kind of been steady state or slowly rising is going to go up more is because the market is going to be educated that this is different than what was available 10 years ago. Is that accurate, or is there some other reason that I missed?
No, I think that's accurate. I think that, so number one, I believe we will have deployed into every major oil company in the Middle East by the end of this year. So we've been very quietly out winning POCs and getting market share and traction. We haven't made a big deal out of it. I think most people would say, well, Bayshore, the technology is great. They don't have much market presence. We're very quiet about what we're doing. It's been a horrible year, right? So we've been focusing on just getting POCs done and getting stuff installed. I do agree with your comment, is that when people understand why GE has bought into our mindset about this and why these other companies are, that, we actually can deploy cabinet level advanced security protection with our limited human capital staff of OT engineers, right? And actually put it there without creating problems. And so, yeah, we do believe that that's going to get traction and actually grow the market at a higher rate than it has been. And it has stagnated. Anybody who's honest and realistic about it, it's stagnated, but it's stagnated. I think there are great companies out there, but let's be honest with you, they're all offering the same solution. Right? It's basically the same version of a firewall. So we're a little different, and we think we're a little easier to use, and we think we're providing better security by doing the full payload analysis. Right?
Okay. Well, and I would say too that you're really the only company I'm aware of that's actively marketing solutions. So that gives you a certain advantage as well.
Right.
Now, just one other question on that. When I talked to Eric way back when about Tofino, we said, well, isn't the future that someday this is going to get integrated into the level 1 devices?
Yeah.
And we saw this XDE announcement. I believe it was from Owl that talked about an integrated module.
Yeah. Right.
Now, probably 10 years has passed since Eric and I had that conversation, and it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Do you see this integration being a reality in the next 3 to 5 years, or is this just something that makes sense that still isn't going to happen for a while?
It's going to happen. So I started my career in the aerospace business. It's going to happen with a funded launch customer.
Okay.
That's how it's going to happen, right? We could take this technology today for OT Fuse. Now we have cloud products, and we're actually, we'll talk about NetWall, and it's a physical device today, but we actually have a very advanced design to work in a cloud, and we are working with a launch customer for that. But on OT Fuse, it's going to still need to be a physical presence, either, I won't say a chip, I'll say a board, sitting inside one of these routers, but it's going to take a launch customer. And so my God bless, the other people that have announced it, I'm sure that they know what they're doing. But for me, with the engineering that we have slated to integrate with GE and to continue the work on NetWall and OT Fuse, we can do it, but it would be a funded launch customer, like an aerospace project.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know. I'm pretty good directionally at making predictions, but I tend to be more optimistic on time frame than what actually ends up happening. Okay, let's switch. We're going to get one more product I want to talk about of yours, then we'll switch to the GE discussion. So you have the NetWall, the data-diode unidirectional one-way device.
Correct.
And I was really interested in that because, again, that was a market that was fairly stagnant for a while. It was growing. There are definitely use cases where those are no-brainers. I mean, I've gone to war with some, let's say, some cloud service providers and others, and just insisted my customers weren't getting it unless they could deploy one of those. So I'm a big proponent of using it in places, but it was a waterfall market primarily.
Yeah.
Some OWL. Really distinguished by its high cost. It was very expensive.
Yeah.
Now I've seen yourselves, OWL, a few others come in and really make this a much more affordable offering. So a couple of questions here. One is, do you think the lower cost is going to expand the marketplace? And if so, rough order of magnitude, you expect that? And secondly, where will we get in terms of, I know you don't like the firewall, but let's say whatever you're using for perimeter security, where will we get in cost? Will they end up being pretty much equivalent and you'll just say this or this, or do you always see the NetWall unidirectional thing being 2x, 3x times the firewall solution?
So you asked a couple of questions there. So we were not interested in going into this market just to nick 10% off the current providers, right? It just wasn't worth it to us, right? The market's not that big, to be honest with you today, right? Another analyst, when we gave the presentation on NetWall, said, Kevin, what you're really, you're going to take some business away from these other people. But what you've really done is democratize this technology. You're going to open it up to a lot of people who should have been using it, but didn't want to spend $100,000 to do it, right? And it's a lot easier. So I believe we're going to grow the market that should have been using unidirectional transport on segments of the market. And to be honest with you, and again, this comes after a long career, it never surprises me. We developed this product with the idea that, you should put OT fuses and then use, NetWall to transport to your historian, and water districts who really couldn't afford data-diodes. But our first two customers were pharmaceutical, who were using this in an IT environment, who were transporting data from one segment of a network to another, were formulary and customer data, who didn't want to spend $150,000. But we're willing to spend $30,000 to populate the network, right? And so I think I do think NetWall is a revolutionary product, not an evolutionary product. OT Fuse is an evolutionary product in OT security. NetWall is a revolutionary product. We have a gigabit product that sells for $30,000 with every connector that we supply. It's a lot cheaper than what's out there. If you don't have a regulatory compliance issue that you have to have optical transport, it's a no-brainer. You put it in your lab and we're 62443 approved today, but it's not hard to take a look at a device that's going to cost 30 versus 150 grand. Now, from the channel perspective, think about this. It's one chassis. We ship the base at 50 megabits. It's software selectable to 100 megabits or a gigabit. So for our partners in India, for our partners around the world, that's great. Because instead of going from all these different components and SKUs that they had to have, they've got one. And by the way, OT Fuse is the same way. One platform does our standard, S7, Rockwell, Modbus, VNet, software selectable for iFix, software selectable simplicity. So if you're a partner out there and you've got to order or inventory this stuff, I can cover all of that range from cabinet level to a data-diode with 2 SKUs. That's revolutionary. And believe me, we've been very successful this past year in signing up large channel partners. That's part of it's not only price point performance, but it's their cost, right, to deploy, manage, inventory, and service this stuff. So, they're revolutionary designs. It's just taking the market into different directions. So on NetWall, I do believe we're going to open this up. I can tell you right now, we have water districts that are POCing this that no way could have afforded $100,000 for a high performance data. And they don't want to do a rip and replace. They don't want to buy 100 megabit and find out it's not enough. So, hey, buy the 100 megabit. You need a software license to go to a gigabit. Here's the switch.
Yeah, I'm hearing though revolutionary primarily just in, I think you use the term democratization. So not so much the technology, maybe the way the technology is bundled and delivered and priced. And I'd agree with you. There have been many cases I know where asset owners have said this would make sense, but we're just not going to spend that much money.
Right.
It's better than a firewall, but it's not 10x a firewall or 30x a firewall.
That's right. That's right.
And I would just give you my own point of view. I think where I'd like to really see these one-way devices, whether they're from you or someone else, deployed is with these open-loop cloud services, the predictive maintenance, that sort of thing. It's just a no-brainer. They have no need to be in the network, so why allow them? Even if they say we vet our people, it's a VPN, we do all this stuff. Why take the risk? Why not just send them the data?
Right. So the answer is it was expensive to do that. Now it isn't.
Okay.
Right. So we believe, and I think this other analyst hit the nail on the head, because it's what I internally believe. You're going to really widen this market. What you've done is really widen this market up. So we'll see. We'll see how the next year goes. Yeah,
that'll be interesting to watch. I guess the counter argument to that would be, to the degree the market is moving to closed loop services where there's some level of control coming back, then the one way doesn't work so well. But that's
we do. We're the only company in a unidirectional that can give you assured guaranteed delivery.
Inbound?
Yes. And so I would need to actually have my CTO explain it, but we provide guaranteed delivery of the packet.
Well, no. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying closed loop services, like if I'm having you manage your boiler and I want to send something back saying change this control setting, but that's where your deep content inspection at the edge can say, okay, they're allowed to do this, but not that.
Yes,
but that would limit the one-way market. Okay, so let's move on now to the GE question.
Sure.
So, or the GE announcement. So, you sent me some preliminary information that Bayshore Networks is acquiring, and I want to know exactly what this is, but you're acquiring some of the OpShield technology from GE. Mm-hmm. So is this, maybe if you can explain, are you licensing it? Is it now your IP, or what exactly was that sort of relationship?
Yeah, so we have a license. We did license the IP, right? And so there are reasons why it's called a license versus a purchase, and it has to do with how we paid for it, right? Within the greater GE organization on how they consider a sale or a license. And so we licensed it. We're in the contract now, the preferred supplier for GE for Edge, and we will end up doing a migration and within their channel replacing the existing products. with what we, have tentatively named OpShield Next Generation. It's clear, I want to make clear that although we're licensing this technology and becoming the preferred supplier for GE, we're an agnostic company. We're currently in discussions with a second large PLC vendor to supply them a line of products. And so what we've done is greatly enhance our technology portfolio. And again, democratizing that technology, which it really wasn't when WorldTech was sold. They just focused within the GE channel, which was probably a mistake. But, we're taking, and we can talk about the technology, but we're taking that technology and embedding with ours and democratizing it, making this a broader, much more in-depth offering for customers.
And I was a little surprised when I heard this, because I've seen a lot of the ICS vendors kind of going in the other direction. They're looking at bringing more security products and services in-house and building up their own offerings. But GE, now they'll still have them through you, but they decided to spin it out. Why do you think, why did they do that? Why didn't they just keep it in-house?
Look, I can give you what I think. You probably need to get the answer directly from GE. We're solely focused on this. When we make a decision about which direction to go, it's an easier decision for us to make them within a larger organization, right? I think, to be very honest with you, we impressed them with what we could do. We impressed the GE digital management team that we were far more advanced than they were, and that we were taking the technology. And again, this is where the line comes in, without just having the cabinet level protection, but having this advanced data-diode and having this advanced access technology, that to the leadership of GED, it was like, look, this company is just going to do a lot better job, and why don't we ally with them and help them along instead of trying to own everything? I agree with you that other companies are building their portfolio in the PLC space, but they're doing it through they're mostly doing it through alliances today, right? So we will have an alliance with another PLC vendor probably to announce here in the next 90 days, and then we'll be supplying them a line of advanced technology. So they have it in their line, but no, they don't necessarily, like GE, want to own the business. And part of that is, we're able to attract very talented, high-end security for people who want to work for a startup, who want to work for a leading edge company. It's a little different environment. And so my hat is off to the president of GE Digital, the new gentleman who came in about a year and a half ago. He basically said, you guys can do this much better than we can. And we'd rather have you as a partner and have you own this and drive this. And that was, I think, the right decision, not only because Bayshore was very fortunate to pick this technology up and what it will do for Bayshore in the market, but I really think he made the right decision.
Okay, now we're putting up a graphic of your products. We've been doing it a couple times throughout the show here. Now, what function or role does this new technology fit?
Sure.
Compared to what you had today, what gap is this filling?
So there are two primary gaps. So first is they have a very advanced management console. And they should. It's been in development for well over a decade. So it would have taken us a couple of years, to get to all the functionality that they had. The second is, very honestly, they had a very robust and in-depth energy protocol portfolio and healthcare equipment portfolio. We didn't have that, right? And I would sit in board meetings, and the board would always ask me, well, when are you going to go after the energy space? I said it would take my entire engineering team a year and a half to 2 years. We'd stop development on everything else to get to a spot to where we would be really considered a supplier to address for our channel. And so this catapulted Bayshore now into having this very robust energy and medical device portfolio, along with a really sophisticated management portfolio. And the other thing is, to be very honest with you, we were not a low-cost manufacturer of the cabinet level protection device. GE brought us significant cost savings around that. We will announce a 40% price reduction on Monday for OT Fuse. It's going to go from fully loaded at $49.95 down to $27.95. I think that's going to really rock the world of a lot of people. And so it is just, to be honest with you, we're very, very fortunate that we were able to do this with GE. It wasn't easy. You can imagine dealing with a large corporation, trying to get something and the different, issues within that. But it's done, and it's transformational for Bayshore.
Well, I want to ask you another question on that, but just on the price, that's important because there are some customers that need security no matter what, but they're that top of the pyramid, as you described earlier, that top 10%. Yeah. I've always, even before I got into the industrial area, when I was more in finance, there's this maximum percentage that people are willing to allocate security to the solution. So if the things cost, if the PLC costs me $30,000, well, maybe I'll pay 10% for security on top of that. And I've always used 10% as just kind of a rough benchmark. So that the price reduction does open up the market to more people. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. The question I had, though, was when I was doing my detection market analysis, first couple of times I left GE off, and I heard from them, and they said, right. Hey, no. We do this, right. and I noted that especially with, for example, like the Mark 6 protocol support. If you are a Mark 6E customer, it made a lot of sense. But does this mean now that Bayshore is competing against your Clarity, your Dragos, your Nozomis?
Well, we're not, because we're not offering the asset management portion, right?
What about the detection side?
Well, I mean, we are, but we're taking it at a different direction, right? Those companies are sort of, they're IDSs, right? We're an IPS. There's a difference, right? And so we can actually stop an attack. They can't stop an attack without utilizing a third device, right? And so there are people who absolutely need and will utilize their technology. But you and I, Dale, know that there are a ton of ICS customers that could never use that technology. They don't have the human capital to sit there and monitor what's going on. They have to put a device in there that can automate the response. So it's different. I'll tell you a quick little story, and this is part of the value of being old. My wife and I were vaccinated last night, and we were in the car, and she started laughing. She said, "This is one of the only benefits of getting old, right? Is we were in line and we got vaccinated." But when I was at Bayshore, we would love people to have IDSs because we wanted the alerts, we wanted the signatures. We wanted to be able to ingest that, right, to be able to act. And I remember walking into a guy, and I won't say the company, and the question I asked is, do you have IDSs? And the answer was, yeah, we bought 15 of them 8 months ago. Great. What are you doing with the alerts? We unplugged all the boxes. And I was like, you unplugged all the boxes? He goes, we're so overloaded with what's coming in. We just couldn't deal with it. And I can tell you from the Bayshore side in our SOC, real crime started around you really saw exponential stuff happening around 2003 and 2004. We couldn't hire enough analysts to keep up. What changed? Really tipping point, right? Yeah. And CISOs understood, hey, I can put it in an alerting mode. It doesn't have to block. And I can tune all the crap out that I don't want my analysts to have to see. And then I can stop this other stuff. Well, when we got to 2006 or so, you couldn't give an IDS away, right? You just couldn't give it away. So there's a market for what these folks do. And again, I think there's some of the smartest people I've met in 41 years on the detection side, the management and detection side, but I have customers that would never be able to use that, right? So I sit there and say, yes, if you can afford that and you can layer it on, more is better. I will say though, Dale, and I make a point of this, flooding a team with a bunch of threat analysis or alerts that doesn't have the capability of ingesting that data does not help. It doesn't help, right? So you have to be able to give people threat analysis or matrix if they can adjust it. Otherwise, you have to give them the capability to remediate an attack in real time, but then to be able to go back in a forensic manner, right, and make sure that they've positioned themselves from a security posture to deal with what's happening. But I've seen this for years. You just every tool in the world, no matter how good it is, isn't right for every customer.
No, I think you're right, and it's not an either or. I've seen, for example, I believe that you're not going to see OT people looking at this. It's just too much work for them. But a SOC or a third party looking at it, I think, is probably the future. So does this mean, though, that most of this licensable technology will be used to make your existing products better and the management console that you said, as opposed to saying taking the product that is OpShield today and having that be a key part of your line?
No, you'll see the protocols from GE basically embedded into the OT Fuse product, which is actually a more advanced hardware device, right? You'll see those products bolted up underneath the GE management console because it's far more advanced than our console, right? And you'll see Bayshore with the launch, and the launch is going to be sometime between June and October. We haven't actually nailed that down yet, but you'll see Bayshore and our channel enter the energy market.
Okay.
Right? And the medical device field, right?
Well, certainly the market with the GE protocols would be a natural because that's something that I would always assume that GE would do a good job on the GE protocol, so you probably have some nice IP there. And I looked at the funding situation with Dragos, doing that big boom in December of last year of $110 million. If you were going head to head with them, that would have been tough. I noticed that you've raised $11.4 million to date with the last round back in March 2017. Do you think that you're going to be able to continue your growth for the next couple of years organically, or is another round in the future?
Well, there's definitely another round in the future. So I'll give myself one compliment. If you talk to our two funds, BGV or ForgePoint, they will say, Kevin, across the entire portfolio, is the most capital efficient CEO we have. And so we've been very, very judicious. Look, you blow a lot of money on a go-to-market team. We was fortunate enough not to really expand right at the beginning of the pandemic, and so we have a great engineering team. We're going to utilize the channels of not only GE but the other PLC vendors we're going to bring on board. We'll have to raise more money. I've been doing this a long time, Dale, right? And so when I see people announce stuff, our sales grew, our ARR grew 80% this year, and our customer base doubled 100%, using percentages, right? And we just hired a new CRO. I kind of go, okay, so that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Things are going great, but you changed the guy leading the sales team. So, I look at some of these numbers, I wonder how the burn is in some of these companies. I don't use a metric of how many people we hired as a good metric, because in the 41 years that I've been in this industry, I've seen companies hire hundreds of people and collapse. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with anybody here, but I've just been around a long time, right? Our burn is under $300,000 a month, right? And that's coming out of a pandemic. We're well managed. I think we're well positioned. I think we're going to be very valuable with this GE acquisition. I wanted to announce it. I didn't want to raise money until it gets announced, because I can raise money at a much higher value now, right? And so I tell the employees, yes, I do 3 different jobs right now. I'm the CEO, the VP of sales, and the head of business development. I haven't brought on any heavy hitters. I've been able to get through the pandemic doing this. And I tell the team, the less money I have to spend, the better it is for you on our exit. Now, we'll grow. We have completed some huge POCs over the last few months, but we still have countries and great partners opening and closing, right? And I need to see some stability here before I bring on, people who want to make $500,000 a year and all this other good kind of jazz. And believe me, I'm chased by people who want to join this company, and especially with this, when this announcement comes out. But it's, I think, a steady pace to make sure we don't blow, what we have is better. And I can't predict what's going to happen over the next 6 months. I think things will be better on the OT side than they were this past year, which were horrible between March and June. I mean, every lab, everything was shut down. You couldn't get on site to place. You couldn't do anything. We see stuff picking up. We're in multiple POCs right now in the Middle East and the Far East and India, here in the US, that have all started over those things are starting to happen, right? But, I'm very conservative. And so we'll see what happens. We have a couple of great partners behind us in ForgePoint and BGV. Yokogawa is an investor. They were a customer, became an investor, and now are a channel for us, right? And so that's all good.
So just a quick comment on those press releases. You'll notice, the ones that say percentage growth, they never make the Friday news and notes.
Good for you.
And I'm not. I understand why. I understand why they do them. I understand why they do them. I can't really judge what they mean without the numbers. So right. That's what it is.
You look at that. I could sit here and tell you my customer base grew 500% with Bayshore this year. But I get the game. So good, it makes people feel good, I guess, to put that stuff out. And that's okay.
Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
The last question I wanted to ask, and this is related to GE as well, it's a channel question. And my own experience with ICS vendors is they're not terribly, as a rule, and there are exceptions, I would say for like Emerson with their power and water cybersecurity suite would be an exception. But as a rule, they're not really great channels. And I've experienced this from the asset owner side, where we've actually wanted to buy one of the products that they supposedly resell, and I can't get the vendor to quote it to us or give us a demo or give us any information, especially on the demand generation side. Now, maybe if the customer demands it, maybe some are better than the others. But what are you really expecting, I'd say, in 2021 and maybe in 2025 in terms of the ICS vendor as a channel for ICS security products?
That's actually an excellent question, because you get sucked into, is this nirvana, where people think, wow, it's nirvana that they're going to sell this stuff. They're going to sell this stuff if it enables their solution. That's the simple answer. And so I think if you go and you make it part of the enablement of their process controls and their solution, you're going to be more successful than just trying to sell raw units through the channel. Now, I will say that, the OT space is a little different than the IT space. There are discrete channels, right? So GE is a good example. The Simplicity channel, for example, it's pretty much a discrete channel within GE. You can try to sign all the GE partners up who are doing that, and we do have a lot of GE partners on board. But in some respects, it's easier for GE to bundle this as a solution into those discrete channels. Not so much so for some of the other PLC vendors, but there are PLC vendors. And, I think Emerson you bring up is a good one. It's sort of a discrete channel. So if you can get into their product portfolio and sell as part of the solution, I think you'll be a little more successful. Time will tell, right, to see. I do think this does come down, to be honest with you. It's great to have these relationships. It's great to do this stuff. We have a dedicated effort of recruiting local and regional VARs and catering to the engineering services company. That's how we got into these water districts, right? That's how we got into some of these oil companies. And so we have a dedicated team that calls and services the local and small engineering services because their customers look to them to say, what do I need in this network, right? And so we're taking a two-pronged approach, right? We're developing relationships with the PLC vendors and providing them technology and outline. And what GE likes is they do have, actually what GE likes is they do now have an OT line of product to put through their channel, right? They like that. And I can tell you there's another PLC vendor that really likes that. They like the fact that it's not just win or lose on this one point solution, and that we're differentiated from the other solutions. We're specifically not going after the next generation firewall guys. We're trying to layer on top as a layered defense. You can put our stuff in, you can have their stuff up at Purdue level 3 or at whatever, right? But look, there's no nirvana. I can't tell you one path is going to be more successful than the other path. I do realize what you're saying in that just signing the partnership and getting their people on board, it's like any other channel partner. That's 5% of the battle.
Yeah.
Signing them and getting their people trained is 5%. It's not the win. It's, the 5% of the battle. That's where a lot of guys who have CEROs who kind of go in and out of their jobs every 12 to 18 months make the big mistake, right? It's not just signing them. So you have to make it as an enablement to their overall solution. That's the win. And if we can articulate that message through these partners, then we'll be a successful vendor for them. If not, we won't. It's that simple.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming on the show and in advance of your announcements, which is coming out, I believe, on the 8th. Is that correct? So
it's coming out on the 8th. The announcement will be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 8th.
Well, this isn't coming out till the 10th, so it'll be a couple days
there
after
you go.
that, but it'll be fresh information. And so thanks for coming on the show. Congratulations on the deal with GE. I think that's, those large companies are not easy companies to negotiate with. So that is a major accomplishment, what you guys did.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other thing that I just really like is that Bayshore has a position. You've got this full line, you're this democratizing line price. There's the market will tell whether it's a viable position, the right position and such, but I really appreciate when I put my marketing hat on that it's just not another one among many, that you've actually staked out saying this is what we're trying to do and it's different than others. So I do appreciate that, and it'll be interesting to watch what the market thinks of it. So again, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Well, that's the show. I want to thank my guest, Kevin Senator. He's CEO of Bayshore Networks. We'll include a link to their site in the show notes. If you have any questions or comments on this episode or any other episodes that we've done, you can actually record your question or comment. Go to dale-peterson.com. On the right side, you'll see a little button that says record your question. Click on that and record your question. Because I'd like to know what you think of these episodes. I'd like to know who should be our next guest, what our next topic should be. If you don't want to record it, you can send me an email at s4@digitalbond.com. And I'll talk to you next time. Something warrants an unsolicited response.